Welcome to Sunday Stories. I'm Michael Sanford. Over the next hour, we'll be sharing stories that celebrate the rich history, amazing people, and fascinating places throughout our region and beyond. They can be seen flying overhead, circling above fields, and soaring above ridgelines. Hawks, eagles, falcons, and owls are all raptors, or birds of prey that live in the region. When they're found sick or injured, they're often taken to the California Raptor Center at UC Davis to receive specialized care. In today's lead story, we'll meet some of those feathered patients.
So let's go see what we have. Somebody's brought in a bird. I think it's an owl, so we'll see what he is.
And see what we have. Oh, wow.
So this looks like a young great horned owl. And we're going to take a look at him here.
Oh, what was that?
That's a defensive response. He's clacking his beak. His tail feathers, as you can see, are not completely grown in. We know that's a young bird.
So it's a baby.
Yeah. So there's his wing. You can see all these feathers are immature, right? So here he is.
Oh my gosh.
So his mouth looks like nice and pink. Then we're going to look for his ears, which are there.
The UC Davis California Raptor Center, later on Sunday Stories. We'll also visit a community college in Coalinga that is preparing students for high-paying, high-demand jobs in agriculture. The 213-acre production farm at the center of the Farm of the Future education program allows students to learn by doing in areas where technology is being used to integrate systems to improve crop yields, increase profitability, and decrease the impact on the environment.
Not very many community colleges have a production farm that also serves as a learning laboratory for students. So it's not just theoretical or somebody showing you. They actually get to get their hands on the equipment, their hands on the crops, their hands on the soil, and actually learn by doing.
The farm these days is not learning how to pick crops. The farm is learning how to program driverless vehicles and, drones and all that cool stuff. It's really math, science, technology.
Preparing for high-tech ag careers at the Farm of the Future, later on Sunday Stories. Our profile story today features UC Davis Associate Professor Dr. Elena Siegel. Dr. Siegel witnessed her mother-in-law's final days in a nursing home. That experience inspired her to change her career path and transition into nursing and research. Her research focuses on improving the quality of care for elder adults in nursing homes and the well-being of their family caregivers.
Beginning in my 40s, I was focused all of my work in business and finance. It had nothing to do with health care.
Life has a way of changing things. Her transformation from CPA to nurse began with seeing her mother-in-law suffer from advanced dementia.
She progressed into an end-of-life stage. I called my office and said, I won't be back.
It was in those final days, watching how the nurses performed, that finalized her decision in her 40s to begin a new career. Associate Professor Dr. Elena Siegel, ahead on Sunday Stories. In our excerpt from Story Today, Sacramento resident Sharon Stiles shares her emotional journey to find her roots and learn her family's history.
Every time I think about that moment, it moves me, it touches me. And it reminds me of how blessed all of us are to live in this land today. I knew that God had given me this mission, this goal, that I had to research the cemetery, find out as much as I could about the people, and do something to recognize them, to have them be remembered, to have their names spoken in the earth at least another time.
The journey to find family roots, later on Sunday Stories. Local clay sculptor Gary Dudley, in his own words, the happy sounds of the ukulele, combating social isolation at school, a conversation with Antiques Roadshow line producer Jill Giles. The California Raptor Center is dedicated to the rehabilitation of injured and orphaned raptors and sees more than 300 patients a year, of which 60% are returned to the wild after receiving care. Of those that are non-releasable, some become education ambassadors for their species.
But it looks so tiny next to the bald eagle, doesn't it? Carry away.
And that explains it all. We are here in Davis at the California Raptor Center, and this is Brett Stedman with Grasshopper. Good to see you.
Welcome.
Thank you for having us here. Tell me who you have here.
Well, this is a Swainson's hawk. His name is Grasshopper, principally because grasshoppers are one of the main food sources for this species of bird. And he's about 9 years old. He's not releasable because he has pretty serious cataracts in his eyes.
Oh.
So we kept him to be used as an educational ambassador, which is what he does here. As you can see, he's trained to stand on the hand, and he goes out in front of lots of school groups and community groups to educate those people, not just about this species, but about raptors in general. So these birds, because they're so beautiful and they have so much charisma, they're just an excellent vehicle through which we can get a greater, broader message to people.
Left wing on your guys' side, you can see over there is wing.
Male, small male golden eagle question. All right.
And look right here.
Yeah, these guys are American kestrels.
Oh, he's
male-
got a rat.
Yeah, he's eating a mouse. Both of these birds are also imprinted birds. That means they were raised illegally by people who treated them like pets, and they identify themselves almost essentially as people instead of birds.
Oh, this is a red-shouldered hawk, and what a beauty.
This bird's name is Mikey, and he came in 1996, so he's now about 19 years old. And they'll live sometimes to 30 years old in captivity. So let's go see what we have. Somebody's brought in a bird. I think it's an owl, so we'll see what he is.
And see what we have. Oh, wow.
So this looks like a young great horned owl. And we're going to take a look at him here. So somebody just dropped this bird off from where?
Woodland.
Woodland, okay. And what do we know about it? It was found on the ground, I
Found
assume?
on the ground, and she said it couldn't fly.
First thing to notice is this animal has his head covered.
So you put the sock on, you guys did.
I'll put that on, and let me just do a quick check.
Oh, what was that?
That's a defensive response. He's clacking his beak. His tail feathers, as you can see, are not completely grown in. We know that's a young bird.
So it's a baby.
Yeah,
It's just like going to the doctor.
it's exactly the same. There's his knee up there. Now I'm going to feel the femur.
You're checking for breaks?
I'm checking for breaks or any kind of soft tissue injuries.
My goodness.
So there's his wing. You can see
Whoa.
all these feathers are immature, right?
I had no idea that wing would be so big.
This is something we do here almost every day in the springtime.
And now you're going to take the sock off?
So here he is.
Oh my gosh.
So his mouth looks like nice and pink. Then we're going to look for his ears, which are there. I don't really find anything physically wrong with this bird. He is a little thin, but a lot of times in the wild they are. So we're going to measure one of his flight feathers, and we're going to use a formula. It's approximately 180 millimeters. So 0.2 times that is 36, plus 9.7, which will round up to 10, will give us 46 days of age. This is a bird that's out of the nest doing what he normally should be doing. The well-meaning people that found him and brought him to us didn't really rescue this bird. They took him away from his parents. We'll see if we can return him to where he came from. If we can't, because it's not the right circumstance, Then we'll finish raising him here. I'll put him in with an adult bird that I have. So he'll have some company and he'll be able to interact with that bird.
This is exciting. Let's do whatever you gotta.
You can see that he's going to clack his beak and he's going to hiss and do all those things, right?
Oh, wow. What a beautiful bird.
We're just going to set him down here and then they can kind of work it out.
Will they interact?
Most of the time within an hour or two, he'll be sitting on the perch. We'll see if that's what happens. The best thing to do here is to just kind of give them some space so there's no stress involved.
Tonight, they said they're ready to release this owl. Ooh, it's screaming. Which he said, Brett said it would be screaming. It would start to make its calls because it is totally wild. Oh, wow.
So that's what a barn owl looks like.
A wild barn owl ready to be returned.
See, this bird is very dark colored face, very gold on the chest with large spots. So this is very likely a female. Males are often more white on the underside with a very white face.
Look at that. What a beautiful face. A beautiful barn owl ready to go back into the wild, rehabilitated here at the California Raptor Center. I know that what you're holding in your hand right now says it all about what you do.
Yeah, she came in as a little 10-day-old fuzzy chick, all by herself, and she looks like she's ready to go now.
All right, I'll let you put her back.
We'll just set her here, you can watch her.
That flight right there, that's what it's about.
Yeah, we can tell by the way she flies in this cage and other cages that we've put her in to assess her flight, that she's completely ready to go.
So we've let some time pass, Brett, with the tour here at the California Raptor Center, and we showed the rescued owl earlier. We're hoping that the rescued owl has joined its surrogate mentor.
Yeah, let's take a look. Oh, there he is.
Oh my gosh, it worked.
Yeah, it usually takes them an hour or so, and they're right up on the perch next to him.
How beautiful is that? They got to know each other that quickly, and the baby was just checking the older one out, and look, inching closer and closer.
Yeah, he'll be a lot more comfortable now with that adult with him, and he'll probably eat really easily, and he'll have a companion until he goes to the flight cage.
That is the sweetest thing. I love seeing them bonding, and I can't believe it worked. You can.
Yeah, it always works.
So not only do the birds take flight, but it helps you soar too.
Oh, it helps me a lot. It helps everybody that comes through here.
Later, we visit the Farm of the Future education program. But first, local artist Gary Dudley's story. He shares how he finds inspiration and how the process of creating is success in and of itself.
Hi, I'm Gary Dudley. I work under the name Garley. I'm a sculptor. Well, my first experience was, my mother was, she did ceramics. So I used to travel with her just to carry her stuff. I'm 8, 9, she just dragging me along. I don't want to go. So once she gets to where she's doing her work, the way she used to keep me quiet was to just give me some clay. But I just remember the first time she gave me the clay was just an amazing thing for me because my mind could do a lot of things once I got the clay in my hand. It just occupied my time. And so everything went silent for me at that point. I grew up in Portsmouth, Virginia, segregated at the time. And believe it or not, a lot of people don't understand that even in segregation, the culture is just a beautiful culture. So a lot of things in my mind I like to remember by sculpting how beautiful people seem to me, even in a time where you would think it would be the culture itself. Just look at the underlying part of culture. There's families that go to church, families that, raising their kids to go to school, And that's the part I remember. That's the part I'm trying to capture. In some cases, it's just pushing on the clay. Sometimes I don't have an idea. Sometimes I'm pushing on clay, and then the idea comes to me. Other times, like the piece that I used my daughter as the model, Sunday's Flower. When I started that piece, I didn't have my daughter in mind, actually. But I needed a child's face, and my daughter was 5 at the time, and I went, that face will work for me. And that was a tough one, because she was 5, and the only way I could get her to sit still was to put cartoons on. The skateboarder is a little bit different, because I've had someone sent me a photograph of a skateboarder, and I looked at that and I said, that's a dynamic piece. Someone asked me, do you plan your sculptures? Well, yes, but those plans usually go out the window. Do you draw a picture of your sculptures? I did that in the beginning where I said, okay, I'm gonna sketch this part and then put this together. But what happens is, for me, I was struggling trying to stay in the sketch. I want people to just come in and go, I like it, I don't like it, and it's okay not to like it. Move on and then find something you do like. That's what art is. Don't try to judge what someone else is saying art is. And I think that's where we are today. A lot of times someone else is waiting for someone else to tell them whether or not they like this piece of art. Is that okay? It's okay if you feel like, if you like it, it's okay. For me, when I started it, it was just success already. And yes, you know, you want to have all the accolades. You want to be the great artist, and that's, I'm still working on that. But most artists would tell you when they create, that's a success. To be able to just start something from nothing and to make it happen is just a great feeling. Everything else after that is icing on the cake.
If you don't like where you're at, you gotta make the change yourself.
Ken Brown is making a change in his life and his career. A trucker for 25 years, now the 51-year-old Modesto resident drives 2.5 hours south through the Central Valley every week. His destination? Coalinga's West Hills Community College and a unique program called Farm of the Future.
My goal is to have everyone proficient at least 3 machines.
Tim Martz is training Ken and these other students to become heavy equipment operators. It's one of more than a half dozen high-paying, high-demand career opportunities being taught at the farm.
The need here is great. You can look at the want ads or go into any of the websites, and there are openings all over the place for heavy equipment operators. The last time I taught this class, there was one company said they would take all of the students that passed.
6 of America's top 10 agricultural counties are in California's Central Valley. Fresno County alone raises more than 400 different crops on nearly 2 million acres of farmland. Even though agriculture here is a $5.5 billion industry, generally low farm worker wages also means that more than 20% of Fresno County residents live below the poverty line.
Most of our families earn about $24,000 a year for the whole family.
West Hills Chancellor Linda Thomas is part of a team of educators and administrators who are helping grow Farm of the Future. The focus? Precision agriculture, training people to use technology to improve how food and fiber is planted, irrigated, and harvested.
The farm these days is not learning how to pick crops. The farm is learning how to program driverless vehicles and, you know, drones and all that cool stuff. It's really math, science, technology.
It's hard to find an industry that is more productive and more efficient and with a greater use of technology to gain all of those qualities, and we wanted to be in the middle of that.
The farm sits on more than 200 acres just south of the main West Hills Coalinga campus. The community college districts invested more than $25 million in this academic program, including state and federal grants and donations. Associate's degrees or certificate programs set students on a variety of career paths. Vocational aide Francisco Soto, himself a graduate, is helping these students train for commercial truck licenses. Practice includes navigating an on-site obstacle course.
Just these few steps right here, you're going to be successful in life, make good money, provide for your family.
I would tell them that to come out here to the egg farm and start a career out here because it's very helpful and you'll make money the fastest way.
So again, my name's Terry Brazzi, and I got told that a lot of you are interested in agriculture as a career.
Terry Brasse is even spreading the word to local high school students. One of the nation's leading academic experts on precision agriculture, Terry came out of retirement to become the Farm of the Future's director.
I think agriculture is an exciting, challenging career, but it's also got high demand jobs and good, high paying jobs.
High-paying jobs like drone operators, who are in high demand to map and analyze the soil and water needs of acres of farmland. Welding classes, heating and air conditioning experts who may be called upon to repair systems inside massive warehouses, even irrigation experts who not only will build vast watering systems, but make sure they can be operated wirelessly via the internet. It's all designed to keep people from leaving this rural region by giving them new skills.
We have a very focused set of curriculum and courses to help them learn that technology. It's not the fact that we have less people, it's that we need a higher educated workforce. And a lot of that is going to have to be local.
Farmers are the original innovators. The next generation workers that we need out of the San Joaquin Valley are really ones that understand that there are far more complex technology needs in ag today than there ever have been.
Not very many community colleges have a production farm that also serves as a learning laboratory for students. So it's not just theoretical or somebody showing you, they actually get their hands on the equipment, their hands on the crops, their hands on the soil, and actually learn by doing.
Right now we were planting broccoli, and it's amazing. Right here, it's a hands-on course. So you're not just taught about it, you're taught about it, you're showed how to do it, and you're put into these practical applications in real-life situations where you actually do what you're taught, and it just sticks so much better.
For some, the West Hills Farm of the Future offers students the chance to transition into a new and better career well into their adult years. For others, it's a chance to discover ag careers they may have once thought were unattainable at a very affordable two-year college.
Trade schools are very expensive, and this is such an inexpensive course that you save thousands of dollars. This does give me a lot of optimism about my future.
This is very affordable, it's really hands-on, and they cater to each student. And if you try and put your hand out, they will take you by the hand and they will show you exactly what you need to do.
We are the promise keepers. We promise economic, social, and civic mobility for anybody that walks in our door. We will meet you where you're at and get to you where you want to go.
Later, Dr. Elena Siegel's efforts to improve the care provided in nursing homes. Our next story takes us to a music store in Roseville, where they sell guitars, ukuleles, and other instruments. And while ukuleles and guitars look similar and are related, they're not the same. They differ not only in size, but also in the number of strings. At the Strum Shop, the 4-string ukulele is the star of the show.
It's pretty much impossible to be in a bad mood when you're playing the ukulele. So it's just a happy instrument. I think the trend with ukuleles started probably around 2006 or so. There was a gentleman named Is Kamaka Ovioli. He did this song. It was kind of a mix of Over the Rainbow and What a Wonderful World. But for some reason, that particular song just really took off around that time.
The tiny but mighty ukulele is the star at the Strum Shop in downtown Roseville. While guitars, banjos, mandolins, and other instruments share the wall, the uke plucks the heartstrings of most customers.
Let me show you a chord.
With just 4 strings, it's easy to pick up basic chords. It's also lightweight, making it popular with kids and seniors alike.
And I'll have Michelle add pictures to that, and we'll get it.
Owner Dan Elliott runs the Strum Shop side by side with his father and business partner, Dan Elliott Sr.
The most rewarding for me is the people that come in here, the families who come in with little children and they want to start them on an instrument, and I get to engage the little children, and it feels good to be a part of a store that's not a store. That's a community music center where we can share music in the lives of the Roseville community.
On just about any given day, you'll find something happening at the Strum Shop. 14 instructors teach private music lessons. There's also group classes for the uke and guitar, along with free monthly workshops, music clubs, and straight-up jams. And every week, string groups perform as part of Roseville's downtown Tuesday nights.
When Dion wanted to open the shop, he had been working in a music store at that time, so I knew that he had enough background to handle it. It was a little unsure because we didn't know, if it's going to be successful or not. Could we pay our bills? But it just took off right away.
This dedicated community became especially important when the Elliots suffered a huge personal and professional loss. Stu Harriet co-founded the Strum Shop with Dan Elliott in 2012. At the time, Stu's ukulele club needed a place to meet. Dan and Stu combined their vision to create a music store and event space. Everything changed in 2016 when Stu suddenly passed away.
It was a sad day when Stu passed. We knew he went to a better place and had a better eternity, but we missed him, and we miss him still.
Stu was really the public face of the store. I was more of the behind-the-scenes kind of guy, whereas he was out front leading the groups, the various jams and all of those things, and people loved him.
In the wake of Stu's death, Dan Sr. stepped up his involvement with the store.
Same intervals as a guitar, the bottom 4 strings.
Meanwhile, his son took on more of a public role. And although Stu may be gone, his legacy lives on through his daughter, Danny Joy. She's a professional singer and uke player, and like her father, she teaches music lessons at the Strum Shop.
When I got home from school in 2010, my dad gave me a ukulele as my graduation gift, even though I had a design degree. I said, "No, Dad, I'm an artist, And then I picked up the ukulele and suddenly just opened up a whole new world for me. Stars shining bright above you. Night breezes seem to whisper, I love you. So when I very first started teaching, I knew how to play. I just didn't have my training in music from school. And I was very nervous, but my dad said, you stay a lesson ahead for the first few months and keep learning as fast as you can. And eventually, every question will be answered when they come in, which is, very nearly there. Dream a little dream of me.
Danny's is not the only career that was launched from this music shop. Dan's wife, Sharon, owns a separate small business making shoulder straps for ukuleles called Sharon's Threads.
I did start off as the accountant or bookkeeper for the store, but then when I started my business and it took off, I had to actually lay myself off from that job.
When we first opened the store, people were asking us for straps specifically for the ukulele. I knew my wife had the ability to make straps, and then she decided to give it a try, and it turned out to be a big hit.
Everyone with ties to the Strum Shop shares a deep passion for music. Randy Clark is the shop's repair guy, and he's as adept at restringing a guitar as he is strumming the banjo. As Dan knows, life can change in an instant. So for now, he plans to keep living each day for his passions, music, and the community that's embraced him.
I plan to be here at the music store until the day I die. I have no aspirations to do anything but what I'm doing right now.
Thinking about stakeholder interviews. Who are you going to go interview besides yourself?
As an associate professor in nursing, the classroom is a perfect workplace for Elena Siegel. This is the Betty Irene Moore School of Nursing at UC Davis. But what Dr. Siegel does now couldn't be more different from what she did the first 15 years of her professional life.
Beginning in my 40s, I was focused all of my work in business and finance. It had nothing to do with health care.
Life has a way of changing things. Her transformation from CPA to nurse began with seeing her mother-in-law suffer from advanced dementia. Her regular visits to the nursing home or skilled nursing facility became round the clock.
She progressed into an end-of-life stage, and that first morning when we knew that was the direction that she was taking, I just went in at lunchtime to see how she was and check, and I couldn't leave. I called my office and said, I won't be back today or tomorrow, I don't know. We initially thought it would just be a couple of days. It ended up being 8 days, and I continued to go back each day and stay the entire day, and everything changed for me.
It was in those final days, watching how the nurses performed, that finalized her decision in her 40s to begin a new career.
The way that they worked with these older adults with cognitive impairment, they would jump into their box of reality and care for them in a very dignified, respectful way, and then jump out and work with the next resident. One day it just hit me that I wanted to do that job.
Then, a different kind of change. Dr. Siegel felt her biggest impact wouldn't be in a nursing home, but in the field of research on how to bring improvements to the nursing home industry. Those business skills that made her so successful years ago are being put to use again.
As I was looking at all the challenges that we had in the nursing home, not enough resources, not enough time, not enough staff, not enough training, so that we could provide the care that we needed to. So people were working just with limits around them all the time. It was almost like it was against all odds.
What Dr. Siegel has learned, and some of those findings have been published, is that the solutions aren't just bigger budgets and increased staffing. It's more basic and something that applies to all kinds of industries. Management can do better at truly understanding the important work done by staff, those on the front lines, and that enables staff to improve job performance as well.
What we haven't focused on in long-term care is the management team, how to give them the skills that they need to not only support their staff, but to structure the work environments and operations in a way that makes sense, especially considering the challenges that you have in long-term care, limited resources.
The timing of her research couldn't be better, with the number of Americans over 65 expected to double over the next 4 decades.
The goal of all this work is to improve the quality of care and the quality of life of older adults that are in long-term care settings, and also to improve the health and well-being of the family caregivers that play a critical role in that care.
Still ahead, line producer Jill Giles explains the Antiques Roadshow production process. Studies have found that social isolation in school impacts students' mental and physical well-being, their academic performance, and it's often associated with being bullied. A student-led program is trying to change the culture in middle schools to prevent bullying and encouraging inclusivity by teaching everyone how to make friends at lunch, which is often one of the most difficult parts of the school day.
Right now it's an epidemic happening in this country. People are feeling alone, they're feeling isolated, people are scared of differences.
Social isolation. It's a problem that's so big, some say it's a public health crisis.
I can almost assure you that at some point everyone's felt social isolation.
Most people think of social isolation as a problem primarily affecting older adults, but young people will tell you it's something they experience too.
A middle school can especially be an awkward time, and it can be difficult trying to go and meet new people. It can be hard to know what to say. I mean, sometimes it feels like there's all these social codes that you don't really know and you don't know what to do.
Davidson Middle School in San Rafael is one of thousands of schools across the U.S., putting a spotlight on the problem of social isolation with a whole day aimed at fighting it.
Today is No One Eats Alone Day. It's basically a day where we kind of get all the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders to kind of mingle with each other.
Who is doing conversation cards? Oh, me!
No One Eats Alone Day is led entirely by the students. High school leaders team up with a local middle school and organize games with the goal of encouraging inclusivity at a time of day that some say is the most isolating.
Lunchtime can feel like an eternity. I mean, I've been there, I know what it's like. So on No One Eats Alone Day, we kind of get everyone together and we play games, we get to know each other, we hand out wristbands and stickers, and it's just like a fun time overall.
Can I get bracelets?
Yeah, here you go.
Can I get like 3?
You get 2.
We have a big group of people in a circle, and we pass the yarn around until it makes a big intertwined web, and we bounce a ball or balloon up and down on the web. And the point of that activity is kind of to show, like, when we're together and we're connected, we can do so much more than a single person can.
No One Eats Alone Day was created in 2012 by a nonprofit called Beyond Differences. Their focus is on eliminating social isolation, starting with where it often begins, in middle school. It's an age where kids start to care about fitting in and all too often feel like they don't.
We learned that painfully, my husband and I, who co-founded the organization, by watching our daughter go through middle school, and lunch was her worst time.
Lily, who had craniofacial syndrome, eventually left public school because it was so isolating and so painful. She passed away at age 15 from medical complications. Beyond Differences was formed after her memorial when other kids heard Lily's story and could relate. They wanted to honor her memory while also shedding light on the problem of social isolation.
No One Eats Alone, I think, is really about making sure that everyone feels safe and included and like they have a space here at Davidson.
Experts say social isolation affects more than just a child's mood. It can affect their self-confidence, their health, their grades, and their future. The Surgeon General says 46% of students report feeling isolated every week. It's a problem middle school administrators recognize too. Since its launch, No One Eats Alone has grown from 1 school the first year to 2,500 schools throughout the U.S.
Days like this really affirm what we're doing. Is I see the teen leaders and the middle school leaders just really step up and put themselves out there, and they want to make their community better. They want an inclusive world.
Would you rather live out in the country or in the city?
Oops. I love this event because I feel like it really does bring Davidson together, and it really reminds everyone that we're so much better when we're all connected, and it's all about just being together, being a whole, and helping everyone out, because one person's success is all of our success.
I've been exactly where these guys are. I've been a 6th grader who was kind of shy and who was just trying to get the hang of middle school, and like kind of coming back and leading this, it's kind of like moving to me.
I hope this becomes a day-to-day occurrence. I'd love to see children connect with one another and form friendships that last beyond lunch today. And even if that doesn't happen, I bet we made a lot of children feel visible who don't always feel visible. And if that can last, I'll feel so grateful that that's the job we've done.
The goddess of line producing. This is Jill Giles, and she is with Antiques Roadshow, which is just phenomenal. Highest rated PBS primetime show?
Ongoing, yes.
And you pick the places.
I am one of the producers that helps select the locations, yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for picking Sacramento.
One of our appraisers that we work with all the time, Brian Witherell, is local here. So it was his suggestion. He said, you should really check this place out once we kind of switched format and went to these outdoor locations. And so we looked at it and we said, Brian, this place is perfect.
This is a massive event to pull off. And what I'm seeing here is that it's like you're planning a huge event, and that you harvest a television show from it.
Exactly.
Is that right?
Very well said. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I mean, it's an event for 3,000 people to bring 2 items each. So we're going to, in one day, appraise over 6,000 items. But at the same time, we need to have these 8 camera crews roaming around and capturing enough footage that we can, make 3 episodes out of it.
So let's break down the process we're hearing about. What exactly do you do?
So, well, we have lots of we wear many hats, and when I'm in the office, a lot of what I do is choosing the locations for the places that we're gonna, visit, going out, doing a site visit. So there's 4 of us that go, and we spend hours and hours taking video and footage and 360 videos, that sort of thing, and then kind of reporting back to the team and saying, this is a place that will work. And then I hire the crews and local production help, camera operators and grips that will help us make it happen. And then when we're on site, I'm one of the producers that chooses the items that go on television, along with Marcia Bemko, our executive producer, and Sam Farrell.
So how many people did you have to bring in for this entire production?
Well, we have about 55 crew members that we bring from Boston and from other areas that travel with us, and we hired about 20 local production folks. And then we have about 75 appraisers that volunteer their time. And then we have 125 volunteers, which we were able to recruit through your help at the local station.
Absolutely, that's a huge team. This is reality television, and I get so sick of shows calling themselves reality television when they're not.
Right.
This is reality TV.
Right.
Because you hear the stories from people that have sentiment behind items or they found something, but I really find your show as a storyteller.
Absolutely, and if the story isn't interesting to you, it's like wait 3 minutes and the next story might be, so if you're not into, the history of maps and map making, and then, 3 minutes later you might be interested in painting and some, regional artist that might be more interesting to you. That's why I like it.
In watching in the past couple of years, Jill, particularly the season that's airing now, you have really upped the production, the involvement, the gee whiz and the fun.
Yeah.
That's intentional.
And I think having it outside and in these really historic and iconic locations, it's really become part of the fabric of the show. So even though you're talking about a painting, you're standing in front of the Crocker Museum, it really adds another depth, another element that I think people are really drawn to. And we're getting a lot of feedback from our viewers that they really love it, the new shows, the outdoor shows.
What is it that makes you have this drive and passion?
Well, it's working for the Antiques Roadshow is wonderful because you're part of a really powerful team of strong, powerful people who are able to produce. We really get things done. So I feel really grateful to be a part of this team. I feel like our job everywhere we go is new and exciting and different. So, I mean, when people say you have the greatest job in the world, we really have the greatest job in the world. And when we're on tour, forget it. I mean, it's just, it's so much fun. And I feel like we're putting out quality television, so it's something to be really proud of.
How much do you know about your family history? Did you create a family tree when you were in school? Or have you researched your ancestry as an adult? As a child, Sharon Stiles would ask her parents about her family history, and her parents would answer her questions up to a point. As an adult, the unanswered questions would inspire Sharon to research her ancestry, and what she uncovered would take her from Sacramento to a cemetery in Texas. In today's excerpt from, we follow Sharon's journey to find her roots and her discovery of her family's place in American history.
I'm Sharon Stiles, and I live in Sacramento, California. What started off as a journey to find my family history led to my ancestral home in a small Texas town, a forgotten cemetery, and a rich history of African Americans in Central Texas. The people and history of Bull Hill Cemetery was nearly forgotten. Thankfully, a small group of dedicated people and the citizens of Marlin, Texas, would not allow their stories to remain untold. In order to understand the people who died here, you must first understand the people who lived here.
If you look at the history of Marlin back on the very early beginnings, it was a very flourishing community.
Marlin's history links to Fort Milam, which was established in 1834. The fort was eventually abandoned. In the 1850s, slave owner Churchill Jones purchased a large area of land and moved his entire family and slaves to the area. Emancipation changed the economy. African American farmers would be the backbone of Marlin's community. Slave owner Churchill Jones had been ordered to give land to his formerly enslaved workers as a condition of his return to citizenship in the United States after the Civil War. That land remained in the families for generations. For most families of Marlin, their roots can be traced back to when the city was established. Milton Scruggs left Marlin more than 60 years ago. Now living in Sacramento, he remembers what life was like in those days that used to be.
We were mainly all what you might call family-oriented, because most of the people in the area was, to some degree, associated with each other. And I could leave from one person's house, and if it was too late for me to go back home, I could spend the night, no problem.
The union between the churches, the school, and the community was quite different from what it is today. So everybody virtually knew everyone else. Everybody just played the role that they were called upon to play.
My parents were high school sweethearts. Both of them were the children of farm families who lived in different communities outside the city limits of Marlin. Eventually, both their families moved into the city and they lived in the same neighborhood. My dad was the oldest of 6 children. He was drafted into the Korean War. Before leaving, he asked my mother to wait for him. After being honorably discharged in 1952, he came back to Marlin, they got married, and 2 days later caught a train to California. My parents would become part of the largest migration within the borders of America. It was between 1915 and 1970, nearly 6 million African Americans left the South, headed north or west in search of true freedom. With all that was happening in Marlin, Texas for African Americans, there was a burden of the South they could not escape. For my parents, that would lead them to California. Over the years, I had questions, and they would answer them up to a point. When they reached that point, I knew not to ask any more questions. Our parents, like many, wanted to shield and protect us from the negative aspects of the childhoods they left behind. They wanted us to be free of that burden for a while longer. In 1980, I moved to Fort Worth, Texas, and slowly learned the answers to those childhood questions, which led to even more questions. What do you guys want to do? During that period, my niece called from California and asked for help with a school project.
The first time I asked my aunt to gather information for the family, I remember I was in the 7th or 8th grade, and it was for a school project. We had to do a family tree and things like that. And I remember the teacher saying, "You'll need this later. This will be some important information that you'll be glad that you gathered."
I collected all of my father's information and all of my mother's information, and then I sent it back to California for her school project, and I sort of put it away and forgot about it.
The second time I contacted my aunt for information about the family, it was my first year in college, and the project was to get a family tree, so the family information along with the medical history, as much as we could find out about our families.
So I pulled out that same information and sent it back to her for her project, but I had a thought that I would go ahead and videotape my grandmother.
My name is Mary Lydian Paul Johnson. I grew up on the farm, and I was the oldest child of 8.
The moment that interview began, Unbeknownst to me, my grandmother's words would answer questions I never knew to ask. Many years would pass, and I would find myself back in California with a stronger, more focused desire to find my roots.
Then one day a cousin in California said, "Where are they buried?" It stopped me for a moment because I had no idea where they were buried. So I emailed a cousin in Dallas, Kenya Paul, and she said, "I think it's a place called Bull Hill or Bull Run." And I went online, found some information on the Falls County website that Jim Bruseth from the Texas Historical Commission and Nidra Lee were working on this cemetery, and if anyone had information to contact them. So I called Jim, left a message, and he called me back.
That phone call would lead to several years, many miles, and countless hours of research and hard work. Bull Hill Cemetery was part of a large parcel of land which belonged to the Churchill-Jones family. But the present-day Churchill-Jones family no longer lived in the area and knew they would never return to the land. So in 2006, they decided to sell it.
Only going to sell to someone with a historic focus, regardless of price.
Jones sold the property to the Summerlee Foundation. The Summerlee Foundation is dedicated to animal protection and preserving Texas history. John Crane, president of the foundation, was told about the cemetery while touring the property.
I first learned about it from Churchill Jones when he said there's an old cemetery somewhere on the property. He said, I'm not quite sure where, but I think it's back over there.
It was John Crane who immediately recognized the need to uncover and preserve the history of the cemetery.
One of our program areas is Texas history, so it was natural for us to want to be involved as a partner with the descendants from Bull Hill Cemetery and to work together to celebrate, number one, the discovery or rediscovery of the cemetery, and also to do as much research as possible on who is here.
When we started working at Bull Hill, one of the first things we did was to conduct some archaeological investigations out there. We brought in some remote sensing technology and a ground-penetrating radar instrument which sends a radar beam down, and when it hits something, it bounces back up and gives us an image of what's below the ground. And so we started doing that, and the reason for that is that while there was a fence that had largely fallen down around the cemetery, we didn't know exactly how large the cemetery might be and where graves might be located. And through remote sensing, we were able to get a pretty good idea about the layout of some of the graves, or many of the graves, and find places where that was fenced today, or more or less fenced today, where there were graves indicating that people had been buried there, and other areas of the cemetery where we found very little evidence.
In April 2008, after the brush and weeds were cleared, Jim Bruseth invited me to visit Bull Hill Cemetery, meet the team, and meet Churchill Jones, the great-great-grandson of the man who brought my enslaved ancestors from Alabama to Texas in the 1850s.
I was absolutely thrilled when Churchill Jones was able to come out to the site, and he really added much to our research project, not in the sense of what he told us about his ancestor, but really in terms of really offering a counter perspective to what was being told by many of the Black descendant community members in Marlin about the history of Marlin.
Researching enslaved ancestors can be difficult and often involves attempting to contact the descendants of the slave owner for records or information. In many cases, those slave-owning descendants never reply to those inquiries.
It's a hard chapter. The ownership of one human being by another that is being enforced by a fairly brutal system of control is, when we look back at it now, we shrink in horror from it. And so they're wrestling with that. They would prefer not to be reminded that their forebears were engaged in this. And they are connected through their families to those people. And so that is a hard thing to acknowledge. And so again, I give Mr. Jones great credit for being there that day.
All of these emotions just started rolling through me. I began to wonder what was happening in the lives of those individuals as they worked here and toiled here and lived and died here, and I was just overwhelmed. And even when I describe it, I cannot give it justice. I cannot tell you just the deep and raw emotion that came over me. I thought about how difficult their life must have been, what it must have been like for them, and how many dreams and wishes and hopes that they could never realize. How suffocating that must have been for them. And just like now, every time I think about that moment, it moves me, it touches me. And it reminds me of how blessed all of us are to live in this land today. I knew that God had given me this mission, this goal, that I had to research the cemetery, find out as much as I could about the people, and do something to recognize them, to have them be remembered, to have their names spoken in the earth at least another time.
To watch the full story, go to kvie.org/Sunday Stories or download the free PBS video app. I'm Michael Sanford. It's been a pleasure being part of your Sunday. We hope you've enjoyed today's stories and that you'll be back next time for another episode of Sunday Stories. Until then, have a great week.